3. Amber, are you froze or am I?
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Brave New Future. I'm your host tonight, Amber King. Very excited to have Ms. Lynn Idahosa from the Federal Way Black Collective joining us as our first guest tonight. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me.
Welcome. Welcome to joining us on Brave New Future here on Uphill Media. And I would just love to know a little bit about you. I've learned a little bit in our time together that we have an amazing Alaska connection. Absolutely love that. Let us know what is going on in Federal Way these days and how are you impacting your community?
Well, one of the first ways is I am the federal executive director of the Federal Way Black Collective. And so 2.5 years ago, a group of me and my friends just started dreaming together and going to city council meetings. And now that is a real thing, right? And so that grew with our relationships being built and understanding the community, truly figuring out what the needs are and wanting to be a voice, not only for, but specifically amplifying the Black voice in Federal Way as our community grows through gentrification. And we've been fortunate to forge really strong partnerships with the City of Federal Way, Multi-Service Center, and other organizations that have helped us become an asset to the community.
And how have you seen the differences between, say, what's happening in downtown Seattle? What are the differences between that and, say, Federal Way these days?
Interestingly enough, even though we're like kind of close, I feel like very, very different. I feel like Federal Way is a bedroom community. That's literally how it's identified, like in various media sources. We don't consider ourselves a big city, although we have almost 100,000 residents. I'm thinking with the new census, we'll be over 100,000, probably about 105. So it's like really large to have a town feeling, but I enjoy it. That's actually, I live here intentionally, not just due to gentrification. I really enjoy the community. I won't say how old I am, but since I've turned 18, I've moved every year until I moved to Federal Way. And I've been here 5 years now.
That's awesome. Yeah, I spent probably 6 or 7 years, actually. I was going back and forth working in Alaska. And so I totally feel you. It was 6-month leases and 6 months in Alaska in the summer and 6 months of winter in the Pacific Northwest. And while I loved that, I needed time to settle down. And I spent part of my adult life in Alaska. And now I've been back here for the last 5 years. And it's been interesting. It's been challenging. It's been crazy to see the growth happening, just the impact on our communities. I love our Pacific Northwest spirit. I don't feel like that's been lost in either our music scene or our, arts and culture and our activism spirit. I've always been warmly welcomed in the political circles to some extent on the left. And so, I'm wondering how does that feel for you in Federal Way? Are you having, and how is it COVID impacting your business?
Well, and I guess I didn't even address that. So I am a member of the 30th District Dems and I'm a precinct committee officer. I'm also the 30th District Dems state committee rep. Well, one of two. And so it's been really interesting and a little complex. So we're a little conservative down here. And so I think there's other districts. And when I say conservative, I just mean more like kind of an older generation. So I think other districts are a little bit stronger with social media. They were doing that way more often. And we are getting up to speed, but it's taken a little bit more time for us to adjust. In the past, we were just such a close-knit legislative district. We were meeting every month. And so not having that, I think plays a big role. Even when sign waving, we're all masked up. I just actually got home from that, and we're like, we just miss each other. I think we'll probably get more volunteers out getting out the vote simply because we don't have another space to meet and see each other. People are looking for ways that they can actually do that.
And looking for ways in which to connect. Like, that's kind of the, like, people are unsure. And I don't know about you, but I've been through some crazy Democratic long marathon Zoom endorsement meetings that have just, like, 8 hours long in the evening, going past midnight. It's been, I don't know if I'm on the north end here, up in the 32nd LD and the first LD now. So I'm not sure if that's been your experience, but that was definitely mine.
Yeah. So going back to like our older district, we end at 9. Rain, sleet, or snow. We're done at 9, max 9:30.
We need to take a picture of that from up here in the north, because we just keep like going and going, and it just turns into it.
They are like, motion to adjourn.
Yeah, but it's been interesting. I mean, we have a lot of really, progressive candidates. And so it's been an uphill battle trying to get them through endorsements. And we've made it through, I think, only sheer perseverance. But it's not been easy, and that's been crazy frustrating to me, only as a candidate, but also as somebody who has supported these, candidates for a long time as well.
I think we're in a really unfortunate place. Especially for freshman candidates, because you're already on a learning curve of how do I run a campaign, right? And then you got the added bonus of anyone who traditionally you could go to doesn't really know how to help you, because we're in a pandemic. Like, it's not like we just had the Spanish flu 10 years ago and like we're used to this. This is something that anything near quantifiably hasn't happened in like over 100, like almost 100 years. So, I think traditionally folks rely heavily on phone banking, door knocking, and those methods are just not as useful. So people are in Zoom calls all day for work. They are probably like not even answering. I know I'm not answering Zoom calls about things like that. I try to hop on as I can, but I'm also a PCO, so that's already carved out in my day. But how do we identify those new voters that are going to be so critical? One thing that I strive to work and improve on within our state is just getting out the vote. I don't really care how you feel on the issue, but I want your vote in the poll. So, because how you feel, I don't want to hear on Facebook. I want to hear it at the ballot box. And that's something I think that we're going to see a shift in this year, because of the fact that there's already so much noise on Facebook, and the conversation's been it's being had way more. In the past, people have been like, we don't do politics. We don't talk politics. But social media is the only place we can really talk to people anymore. So all those conversations are actively happening. And I think it's really going to turn out our voter base this year.
I hope so. I mean, I want to give these youth, something to look forward to. I see them being so frustrated with the status quo, with like not, it feel, and I'm in that, not to age myself, but I'm in that upper, like, experienced category of,
Now I'm still in that.
But, it's trying to get them excited about it. And it's like when you see the party kind of doing the same old thing, it's hard to keep that encouragement and enthusiasm up. And so I'm wondering if there's anything you guys are doing that we can learn from up here, because we need that. People are disenfranchised. Definitely.
And I think I would say that I definitely agree with you. I don't think it's a lack of will. I think it's more so how do we do this? And so one phrase that I kick around a lot with my friends is that I feel that traditionally politics is very transactional, especially when we're dealing with like the grassroots portion. And what we're seeing right now is a need from the people, like, you are going to be relational. You are not just going to ask for my vote. You're going to help with education. And so that's what we've been focusing on, because once you take it off of what just the vote, right? And you start educating people on what they need and how they can interact with the system. I mean, I don't really think, I think, yes, there are parts of the system that have issues, right? Everybody knows that. But we can work within certain things to fix it. So if more people understood truly what a levy was, then they could use their vote in an effective way to make sure that the things they want to be funded are funded. It's interesting. I have people that in our communities that are just like, I want to support you. How do we do that? And I'm telling them, by voting, right? Because your individual donation is great and we appreciate that. But when you vote and you're paying attention to people who was in legislature, and we're focusing on power mapping, and we're really understanding what we're dealing with, and the more people we have that are involved, and you don't have to get involved with like a particular party, just get involved. If you have an issue, there's other nonprofits that are issue based. Like, get in there and learn about what you want to accomplish, because civic engagement it's not just like something you pick up and put down. Like, that's another reason why our democracy is not functioning. If all you're doing is voting in November, then you're absolutely right. Your vote does not count. And that is your choice. And so what I need you to do is find a way to get educated, come to organizations like the Federally Black Collective, or whatever legislative district you're comfortable with, finding an organization that's doing similar work. Or if you want to know about the work we're doing and recreate it in your city, we can show you like this blueprint. You've got to get to your council meetings. Share the information from your council meetings in a palatable way. So I want to say next week on our website, we're going to start to release meetings from every meeting that the city has, not just the council meetings, but their subcommittee meetings, so that you can understand the process and how it works. And once you get it on that most local level, which is easily the place where you can create the most change, then you'll start to understand how the state level works, how congressional level works, and how you can affect change there. But if all you're doing is being a viewer and just seeing what like they're telling you in the media, and you're not researching for yourself and using your moral compass to assess that information, then you're right. You are being left out of the process, and that's something that you need to trigger change. And organizations are available.
So how did the Federal Way Black Collective start? Like, tell me its birth story, its origin story.
Honestly, the same way I'm telling everyone else to do it is exactly what we started. So I just started going to council meetings. For me, myself personally, I started going because my cousin was a good Samaritan who later ended up being arrested and assaulted by the Federal Way Police Department. And all our family wanted was an apology, and that didn't happen. So we ended up taking them to court, and we won twice because they made us litigate it again in appeals. And that is what gave me the gateway to start attending these council meetings. So we started going. I started organizing a Facebook campaign, Charged for Change. Show up to these council meetings, give your public comment, say what you want from our community. And then we realized public comment is not how you create change. But we had to go to those meetings to figure it out. And so we were like, city council is like, when they're about to approve it, you got to go back. You got to go to the subcommittee. So we needed to go to Parks and Recs and the Health and Human Services Committee meeting. It took us going to understand the structure, and every city's different. So you have to start there.
That's awesome.
So that's where we started.
Awesome. I just want to hit a shout out to everybody in the chat, and thank you, Jesus, for your great donation. We're definitely just, trying to bring our communities together and talk about, what's working here in Mount Lake Terrace might work great in Federal Way. It might work great where you're at. And, one of the things that I've always said was, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And so you have to fill those spaces, no matter how frustrating they are. I know I got to spend a little bit of time with you during the state convention, and I happen to have been on the platform committee, so for the Washington State Dems, and was able to get you in there, and you had a hard time getting seated. And it's just like, we got to be looking out for each other, because it's so frustrating when the system is just kind of rigged against ordinary people participating, and make sure we're there.
No, I mean, you're absolutely right, and I appreciate that. People like you, groups like the Progressive Caucus, like, you guys played an instrumental role, and I think that in the moment it wasn't that like it was about suppression. I feel like in that moment it was like, we just have to, you know, there's all these other people waiting, right? But that's what I meant about being transactional versus relational. If my volunteer time is really that important, then that matters and that needs to get fixed and addressed. And it shouldn't take my friendship and relationships with all these people to advocate for me. If the organizers feel that's important, then they should make that clear. And I felt that when my privileges were granted, right? And so I was really grateful that they took the opportunity to say, hey, wait, maybe we need to change this and address this right now versus waiting another 4 years.
Yeah, we don't have 4 years to wait. Is my feelings on the subject. You know, I mean, we're just in this precipice of a moment where people are activated, they're stuck at home, they're laid off or waiting for work, or, you know, stuck in some pipeline of somewhere in between filing for unemployment and Zoom calls and trying to teach their kids or keep their kids busy. I know as a mother, that's one of the huge things that I struggle with all the time, having a 10-year-old and a 14-year-old. Is, you know, how do I keep them engaged? How do I keep them looking forward to something? You know, I've known a ton of young people who've committed suicide in the last few months through this situation. And I just, you know, it's like their hearts are just breaking. They don't have the ability to understand the magnitude of the system, let alone be empowered to change what they're doing and feel like they're impacting their community. And so I'm really just trying to, you know, be a voice, be a place, be, you know, save space, make space, be an ally, be an activist like I've always been. But we, you know, it feels like we've got to do better. We've got to keep pushing that envelope, and, you know, things like defunding the police, things like reimagining and reevaluating our societal goals would do so much, you know, good for our community right now. It's just mind blowing. Like the task at hand is just it's monumental. And
this is important work. It is so important, and it's so critical right now, right? It feels like we might never see a moment like this again. And I'm really encouraged by the people that I've been working with and meeting throughout this time, right? Because that's what's going to drive us to where we want to be.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And, you know, so I just wanted to bring up, I know, Oz, if you can look at some of the headlines I have. Let me see I think it's on the next slide, actually a couple down. There's a little like, what's in the news on slide 4. And, you know, these are some of the things that are happening in our community right now. I know you're almost there. There it is. If you want to bring that full screen and pull up some of the links that we have in the rundown, you know, we've got, you know, private federal military kidnapping activists in the streets of Portland. And it's been so heavy. I know I've been downtown Seattle. I've been, you know, in a lot, trying to be as active as possible and safe and meet all my obligations in this time. You know, we also know that like far right threats, you know, were a greater danger than Antifa, and seeing that happen, you know, and being shared out internationally, but getting very little playtime at home. The other one of the big things that really hit me this week was that, you know, when Breonna Taylor was effectively gunned down and murdered in her own home, that they didn't take the time to try and save her life. Like there was just, she laid there. They just let her bleed out. And it's so just unconscionable to me that we're living in this dystopian future of this is our reality, and this is what we're having to deal with on a daily basis, is hearing these stories. You know, there are tensions building and have been building for decades and hundreds of years in the United States, and we've just completely ignored them. And I know you talked a bit about some of the pieces that, you know, really mattered to you, and some of the books we're reading here on the Brave New Future. We always talk a bit about, you know, what we talk about, what we're reading, what's in the news, what's relevant to you. And I know you brought up Stephanie Kelton's book about the deficit. The deficit, I would
Deficit
say, I would
myth.
call it the deficit disorder. She calls it the deficit myth. I would call it more of a disorder.
I agree. It's very, very interesting. Because I've always wondered, especially after COVID hit, right? So when all that money got released, I was like, hold, WTF. What just happened here? Because I've been told this is impossible, right? Like, we need to conserve our budget. We can't just make money. But apparently we can. When they want to.
When it suits them. And we have a lot of friends here in progressive circles and talk. I've been at actually several of Stephanie Kelton's book events that she's had online, which is something I would have normally never been able to appreciate that in this time of COVID, that I've been able to probably attend more events than I normally would virtually. But it's literally like everything we've based all of these decisions on for my entire adult life are mythical. They're not real and could be completely different. And we look at our founding documents, they're old, musty, stale. We look at our thought processes on budget and monetary theory, and I'm finding much of the same. And how do we clean house with that? How do we, besides, we've been saying on Uphill Media a lot is vote all incumbents out.
Right, that was the first thing I was gonna say. Not even just because they're incumbents. I'll be honest. It's because right now, today, they do not understand what we're truly facing. They do not understand the concepts, and I just need you to have the seat.
Yeah, and it's like they just haven't really, kept up on it. They just, it's worked. It's back to fundraising. It's get us back to where we were, and this like fake comfort zone that I personally just don't find ever coming back. So it's like now we've got this like moment in time to make great strides and change, and we need daring leaders that are willing to step up and do that. And we're not finding that. I don't even think
it's that they can't step up. I think when I was watching the congressional hearings with Mark Zuckerberg, and that is when I understood what the problem with Congress was. They were asking him about how the internet works. If you don't understand, that's literally the next vehicle of how we disseminate information, and it's been around for too long. You guys have been in there since it was created, and so you did not take the time to prioritize things in a way that would help us. And so now it's your time to exit stage left. I need some folks that understand climate change and how critical it is right now today. I need folks that understand what the internet is, how the information is critical. That's literally an infrastructure. Why are people paying on an individual basis? COVID would not even be impacting us on this level if every household had internet. This should not be a bill, pay for service. This is how people literally get information. And it's not a crime to be poor.
No, but it feels like a crime, or you're completely at a disadvantage if you don't have broadband internet. And right. I'll have you know, I did make sure that was in the state platform. So you can hold every Democratic elected official in Washington state accountable for pushing for rural broadband internet as a public utility.
Yeah, we had on Thursday Thoughts on my show a couple months ago, we had Dr. Campbell and Chris Reichdell with OSPI. And he mentioned that's something they're interested in. And, quite frankly, that needs to happen. Why haven't our kids been prioritized? So it just shows how our policies have led us to this point. And all COVID did was shine a highlighter on it. Because honestly, how many kids have been able to not research papers, or they have to sit at the library to get their homework done, and they should be able to be at home?
Yeah, and we saw that, we saw it was very interesting to see as our schools were shut down, as all of our school districts are trying to figure out what next year looks like. How are we going to make these transitions and make things equitable when obviously, I pay a pretty penny for my internet and I've upgraded it. I've had to upgrade it. At the same time, I know everybody can't do that. That's not an option for families struggling, and I've been in that situation far too many times myself. And also, how is it different from water? How is it different from clean food and
that part.
Energy?
It's literally, we're at a point in our society where that is just as essential as food and water, especially since we're going to be dealing with the effects of COVID-19 forever. Like, I really need people to wrap their hands around this. I don't really care what you're hearing on TV. Let's think about the facts for ourselves. The way that this disease is currently going, in some level, whatever your comfort level is, you need to adjust your life to deal with this on a long-term basis. I'm not saying you have to do what any government official is telling you to do, but I'm saying that you need to wrap your head around this and figure out what's best for your family, whether it be something to do with how they're going to go to school. I don't think schools are reopening, and that's just the fact. When you're looking at 45, because I don't say that person's name, and this reopen the schools. Let's be clear. Congress holds the purse strings. He cannot take our federal funding from our schools. So I'm not listening to that noise. So our kids can be safe. Our school districts can prioritize them. They are making plans because it's going to be based upon public health. That's who's going to make that decision, not that idiot in charge.
Yeah, and what is the Federal Way District looking at? I'm just curious because I've been trying to follow several of them around the state, just to see the differences. And I haven't really gotten a lot of detail.
Well, I'm sorry, Amber. Really sorry. Real quick, my laptop is dying. Hold on.
Oh, no worries. Gotta get your power. We do have a question though. I just saw it for a second. It was, how do we feel about municipal internet? And I am a firm believer that municipal internet needs to be a public nonprofit and part of public utilities. And I want to say a bit about that because I've worked a lot in the construction industry. And what I've found is that in these public utilities, they have some really, really nice areas because they take whatever leftover money that they have from their fees and they do a spend down. So they go and have their bathrooms remodeled and they go and they have their facilities repainted and magically they're out of money at the end of the year, and that justifies them being able to raise the costs. And that's a little known trick that we don't often talk about, is that spend down, that they're still in the capitalist mindset. And so we need to be very careful about that. We need to have more regular people oversight, not developers and, people in the political. No, we just need to have, Fred at the end of the block and regular people just like, are you managing this budget correctly? And are you spending it efficiently? Because I think they could be saving us a lot more money than they truly
I feel like we should empower our PCO model.
Yeah.
So, as a precinct committee officer, you are over it's about 250 households, right? And so it's an unpaid position, but you do have a little bit of political knowledge. But in that role, there's no money in the campaign. It's really about your relationships with people. And so that requires you to be accountable. It's your bill, your neighborhood. It's bill that you see at the mailbox. So Bill's going to be like, hey, I seen that you said this, not some faraway person locked in an office that you never know how to contact. And I also think, I would argue, Amber, that more of our public services should be nonprofit. Why are our hospitals for profit? Any of them.
Well, and I have a really hard time with them turning into religious nonprofits, which is what we're seeing the market taking over. And especially now with the rulings coming down out of the Supreme Court, that, they get to decide what services are justifiable based on the religious doctrine that guides them.
And that especially affects you and your community, because how many of your community members know that almost 5 years ago, Swedish was purchased by Providence, which is a religious-based system. Yep. Did you know that when they first published them, purchased them, they immediately started praying during meetings? And I'm not saying I'm against that, but what I am saying is I don't think the public truly understands what these partnerships are, and that they've never really been transparent publicly about that purchase.
They haven't, and I've seen it with Good Samaritan all through Oregon. I mean, the whole West Coast literally has gone from the private market, and the only reason they're able to do that is because they have the political and monetary power, because they're getting tax write-offs as a religious organization. They don't pay taxes.
And that's part of the reason why here in Washington we have one of the most regressive tax systems, because so much money and influence goes in from those organizations. And, the interesting thing that I found is it's not even really the money in the contracts. That's why we've been bamboozled for so long. It's all the pass-through money.
Oh, yeah. And then they call it like charity care. That's the other thing. And,
people think that's an actual grant.
And it's not. It's not at all.
It's a write-off.
And it's in the millions. As somebody who is part of the working poor, with autoimmune conditions, I've had to apply several times.
What bothers me is that, and this is why I worked for a hospital for nearly 10 years, and before I'm medically retired at this point. And so when I was there, why I went there was that I believed in their mission statement: patients are first. And towards the end, I was grateful to have an out, because they were no longer first. And like when you're talking about that application, that most hospitals, their staff is not allowed to offer charity care. Patients have to ask. So that means even if a patient is crying, begging, telling me that they're about to sell their house, I can't offer them a solution. And that is a crying shame.
It is. And they often, they don't give, I've done medical billing for many years, and they don't give opportunities for you to be able to challenge their charges. I've had, it was an ER visit at Swedish, and I knew exactly what that CPT code was and what the definition was, and I challenged him on it. I was like, that doctor saw me for 3 minutes. He ordered a test, and he came back in and said goodbye to me. And he charged me for something that should have been a 45-minute visit, and sent me to collections over it. And I had no recourse. Nothing. There was literally nothing I could do about it. It was, except for call HSS and file a complaint. I mean, it's just such a maddening system that you aren't given.
Well, actually, that's not true. But what it was something that could have been done, but they refused to.
Yes, so I challenged them.
Me leave. The billing, and I went to the actual hospital because my numbers were bad because I helped too many people. I didn't take enough calls, and see, that shouldn't be the goal. The goal should be to help every caller I can, no matter how long the call takes. They don't like the queues. I would work with some patients for months, and they don't like that. They just want you to answer the call, give them some information, and I'm not transactional. And I refuse to be made to be transactional. There is something wrong with that. It does not put people first, and arguably it harms our society.
I couldn't agree more. Thank you so much. Thank you for just keep pushing that home. I mean, I don't think people, and that's the thing. Like, we all get kind of siloed, and we get in our comfort zone, and we don't push that enough. We don't ask those questions. And we don't. Even when you're looking at like these recent events, right? Tensions are high. Racism is at an all-time forefront. But what's really important? People have this weird ideal. How you fight racism is doing your part. I don't care if you are like a street sweeper. There is something you can do in your day to solve this problem. And if more people were concerned about how can I do my part in whatever that role is, we would be a better society. Instead of just being like so passive aggressive and like, oh, if I accept any of this, then I'm just an awful person. Wait, sit in it, let it go. Let's start focusing on solutions. Absolutely. I just got a question out of our chat. It says, in what ways could we synergize our energy and money to be more effective in our areas and focus on creating sustainable models to continue the momentum that we build?
Okay. What I think is staying engaged. I know that we are like a society that is driven by like all the updates. We get all these news articles. It's epic alert, new alert, new alert, new alert. Figure out what you're passionate about. Don't make it about everything for everybody. Even everything is a good cause, but find your passion and then focus on how you can move that cause forward. And it's not all about finances and donating. What's most effective is actually your time.
I love that. And how is the Federal Way Black Collective utilizing people's volunteer efforts in time of COVID?
Oh man. So one really fun thing is that like every meeting is on Zoom. So we have been asking volunteers to go to their respective city meetings, their city council meetings, their city subcommittee meetings, and doing like a write-up. And then we post it on our website or our Facebook. And that way, that information can be shared. So that way you're kind of getting involved, you're understanding the process, and you're getting excited and finding your way. So that's because we don't want to tell people exactly what to do, right? Because we're not the keeper of this work. We're driven by community requests. So even the work we're doing now, we were fortunate to have 2 years of community meetings to lead us until we can meet again. And we were able to secure funding for that based on those. So once you figure out what your individual passion is, you can connect with a lot of orgs. And even if you're not in Federal Way, I have a lot of org lists. I'm sure Amber does too. Like, connect with people in the community that are well connected, because most of us are willing to do a virtual coffee, and figure out where your place is.
Agreed. And also so excited to find out that we have mutual friends in Southwest Washington. And we're hoping Miss Mariana can join us later on tonight. We will see. I know she is busy. She works in mental health, and so I know she's still getting off of her shift. So we'll see if she makes it. But, and that's the thing, like, it's different in all different parts of Washington state. And I spend time in Eastern Washington, and, I'm just north of Seattle now, but I've spent a lot of time, down in Tacoma and Olympia and out in more of the rural parts. And it feels different. There's different issues that seem to be popping up, but there's always like this underlying current. Mm-hmm. And so, how to get people, activated to a part where they feel safe and they feel, I think a lot of people, especially, myself having growing up in, rural, more conservative areas of Alaska, that like you're afraid to really speak your truth and find your people. And that's really hard. What advice do you have on that?
It's interesting because this is a conversation I have a lot with people. Washington is a strange place for that. We have what we call the Seattle freeze. So like all winter, we don't really talk to nobody. It's just a very weird place when you're talking about organizing and engaging. I used to do some marketing, and yeah, it's just hit or miss. It's not like you can do a certain level of work and guarantee something out here. And other states are much easier. But what I would say is that's why it has to be passion driven, because if you're just thinking about connecting with just any cause or just trying to be on any train, that freeze is going to be really hard to fight. That it's a little passive aggressive. Like, we want to say that we're really a blue state, but like, if we're honest with ourselves, that's not true. And so it starts with self-honesty.
That's awesome. Yeah. I I have a clip. I'm not sure if you're ready, Oz. This was an event that happened out in Aberdeen, which is kind of literally like middle of the state on the coast. And it was pretty charged, and it was pretty upsetting. And this was people trying to have a Black Lives Matter event, and this was the kind of opposition, I suppose, they ran into, and we found it's continued, and it's been just very racially charged and borderline violent. And how do we stop these in our communities? But I'll let Oz play the clip a bit, and we'll see a little bit of what they were encountering while protesting.
I'm sorry. Patriots run fucking Aberdeen.
That's right. It's our town.
And that's the way it's always
Sarah
gonna be, you
Monroe's
fucking idiot.
hometown.
as fuck. What are you even protesting?
Got something
do you
to say?
No. Some
It's okay,
shit
I'm
in
listening.
Minnesota? Do you even know what the fuck you're doing here? Do you really?
I'm not even from Minnesota.
Shut the fuck up. I know you ain't from Minnesota, retard.
What do you think I was?
What the fuck are you
We're not arguing, people.
Yeah, there's some shitty cops out there. What are you gonna take down the police force in Aberdeen? So all you fucking tweaker retards can run this show? No. Not by my fucking watch, motherfuckers. It's game over for every one of you dumb fucks. And time's ticking. Clock's ticking. You're all fucking retard tweakers. I go to 7-Eleven every goddamn fucking morning pour my coffee. I gotta wear a gun in that motherfucker.
He's spitting.
Pour my
Get away from
motherfucking
his
coffee.
spit, please.
Because you motherfuckers are out there making everybody in the world feel unsafe. You're a bunch of pieces of shit. Go the fuck away. Disappear. You don't belong here. You're not fucking constitutional patriots. Get the fuck out of this free republic. You don't belong here. You're a bunch of drug addict fucking retards. Bye.
Coming from the person has a beer in her back pocket.
People we're having to deal with, and they've just been harassed ever since. So it's pretty outrageous, you know. One of them was arrested over a couple weekends ago for brandishing weapons on the schoolyard. Just clearly not stable people, fully armed, out in public. There's pictures of them with the police just standing right behind them, no masks, just not really, not addressing the issue, so to speak. Clearly in their small town eyes, these protesters brought it on themselves for protesting.
This is, it's interesting. He did this long tirade about how like unsafe he feels, but I'm like, seems like a very calm person attempting to have a conversation with a very uncalm, angry mob who's also armed. And so I'm really tired of people that are armed saying how scared they are of untrained people who are just trying to have conversations.
Yeah, I mean, they just seem the whole thing has been unwilling to even examine any of their actions, let alone, what issues might be at hand. Like they're just
check your privilege. You just walk up to someone and you're yelling at them, telling them something that you've never even met that person, right? And you're just lumping them. You're all, what do you say, like drug addicts, like all these evil, derogatory things. How do you expect to initiate a conversation? Like even if someone, I don't know, I'm like, I think this person has different ideals than me and I need to have a conversation. At what point do you think about the result you're soliciting? Because if that's how you approach someone, you're going for a fight. You're not going for a conversation.
Well, and the bigger thing too is, now that we are here, now that this conversation is being put in public, and then the police aren't doing their job that they're paid to do, of protecting the public, of protecting people who may have different feelings against them. So
I had a similar situation in Federal Way. When we first started what I call like providing security services for the teachers with the Federal Way Education Association so that they could feel safe. Like teachers are not organizers. They just wanted to be a support, right? So at the very first one we did, we meet with the police captain and we're like, hey, we want to do this safely. What is your policy around, escalation? As far as what triggers a response from you, how do I help keep my processors safe? And how do we let you know if there is like a bad actor, right? So they were like, call us. This is what triggers that. Everything should be cool. We're going to try to keep we are going to be set up and we're going to have them in the background. So there was an issue. Someone drove by and they were like, hey, there are snipers on top of this gun shop. And so I call him. I say, hey, Commander, this is going on. And his response is, that is legal. And let me explain to you why. Yes, it's legal, but that was the wrong response. It is your job to de-escalate. So if that shop owner felt unsafe because of protests as a result of anything else going on in the country, what is in your toolkit as a commander to help them feel safe so they are not pointing assault weapons teachers and babies from 2 street blocks away. So what he should have did was say, my officer will sit here, and if there is an issue, we will let your employees know. Because we understand guarding your property is your goal. And I'm not arguing with them about that. But if we are 2 city blocks away, that type of response is only an escalation. Because you're seeking to intimidate us. And that's what we're talking about here. Yes, legally, that's their right. But that doesn't mean that you have to allow them to do it. It's that you can show them a better way. Perhaps they didn't understand, because guess what? As the police officer commander, you've taken extensive training. So you're supposed to offer those tips, not just allow them to do whatever they want to do.
That I can't agree more. It's been so frustrating. We helped end some of the police contracts here in the Edmonds School District because they had armed officers going to all the high schools and middle schools, and it was just out of control. They, at the same time, they're asking for copy paper the first month of school because they didn't put that in their budget yet. They had a budget to have a police contract.
And your job is to educate students. If a police officer is needed, that is free. We already pay for it. I don't even understand why we're paying for additional SROs. If that is needed, that should come from the police budget. I am not currently a policy maker, so it is not currently my job to decide whether or not it is needed. But as a taxpayer, looking at the fiscal responsibilities, that's just not a fiscally solvent plan, and that's why it's not working. Because when you hire someone from an outside agency, you have no control over their behavior. You have no control over their policies and procedures and how they engage with our students. So if you allow police officers whose policies and procedures teach them how to deal with criminals to deal with our children without establishing a subset of policies and procedures, then you are treating our children as criminals. And you are funding with my money that I'm telling you to buy those books and that paper and those pens that you now ask me to buy, because you're doing something that's not even your role. And to be clear, the Supreme Court has said several times, because it's about response time, right? That's why they do these SRO contracts.
That's the excuse.
Shooting, no officer has any expectation of protecting our kids. That's literally been ruled by the Supreme Court. So why do we still do this?
Yeah, and we've seen that. We've seen it at all levels of government after 9/11, and not that it didn't exist before then, because I had, armed officers when I was in school, and, that main officer that was at our high school every day, 5 years ago, it came out that he had, inappropriate relationships and was, sentenced for sex trafficking. Like, these people have never been good or there to protect us, and they've only preyed upon the most vulnerable. And I most definitely see our youth as vulnerable. Yeah. And why we need this in the education setting is just beyond me. It makes me so mad as a taxpayer, as a parent, as an early childhood educator. Like, this is just not the vision and the need that we have right now. Our children need help. They need our support. They need, we need access to childcare.
They need therapists. They need counselors. They
need healthy food.
What I find is they have like one family liaison for an entire school. So the family liaison or school counselor's role is to know the students so that you can develop and assess their needs and meet them. If you don't have the time or capacity to get to know the students versus just a name or a number, then you can't do your job. So we wonder why we're seeing an increase in disciplinary problems. The staff don't understand these kids. They don't know them. They don't have, here we go again, they are transactional. The kids are numbers versus relational. We have them for 12 years. We force them into the system. It's legally a requirement. The least we could do is actually support them.
That would be a lovely change, or, make sure they have, the basic essentials at school and at home, and not, be spending our money on police officer contracts. It's so insane.
I'd like to see a copy of that, if you could, whatever language you have, because I'm taking that to my district.
Yes. We fought hard for it, and I was grateful that my daughter was, even with lots of anxiety, was willing to stand up and say how the students distrust this process. So I hope we can, carry that pattern forward. I know Seattle School District was able to do it, and we just need to keep pushing these levels. But I don't think regular people realize this is happening.
Right.
Either you're part of a different voting block, or you don't have kids in school anymore. So you're like, oh, that wasn't a thing when I had kids, so why would it be now? But it really is different. I know my childcare bill was more than my mortgage, and things for working families are not okay.
Right. Like, I'm actually a board member with the Children's Campaign Fund. And when I joined, I was like, what is your goal for childcare? And one of our goals is that childcare should not be a business model. It doesn't work. I think that even now, look at COVID, all these daycare centers have closed. And as we're talking about reopening our schools, right? How is that even possible if whether or not it's a hybrid model, another model, we're not even giving room for our parents to plan. Like, this is just.
Or single mothers, that's a huge concern for me. As a single mom of a child going into high school and still in elementary school,
so you're going to need 3 laptops for your household, because you got to work, and both of them have to be able to go to school. Who's paying for all that?
Yeah, and somebody to sit there and babysit them, that they're making all their meetings on time. Because if I'm working, I can't do it. Cook lunch, breakfast, dinner, clean the house. Now everybody's home. It's really challenging.
Mental health is one of my biggest concerns, and the sad part is our state was already in such a awful position regarding our mental health services that our children, I'm not even sure where to start.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. And that's the thing. I'm worried. I'm seeing this, uptick in mental health crises in the, 20 somethings and the younger 30s. And we haven't seen enough of it in our young kids. And I think they're, especially it's summer, they can be a little bit distracted, but it could really change, greatly in the next few weeks and months as we develop, or especially as housing stresses start hitting more families. I'm very concerned that our federal government obviously has done nothing to actually help the people.
Right. They haven't. And if you look in other countries, it is embarrassing that we are supposedly the richest country in the world, right? Yet we have the most inefficient and least equitable and just overall worst stimulus package. The CARES Act was a failure, in my personal opinion. I don't understand why they worried so much about these small business grants and all this stuff. Families could have done whatever they needed with that money if you would have just gave it to families. We don't need you to tell us how to apply and get in all of our, just help families, period. We're trying to figure it out. Even just now, the CARES Act funding that's going to go help the one owner businesses, the city of Federal Way just started that grant application process. People have been home from work since March.
Yeah, that's way too late. Way too late. I saw one of my little town in Skagway, Alaska, decided to take their CARES Act money, and they did. They turned it right around and gave each resident $1,000. Because without a cruise ship industry coming into town and basically the economy of the year, which is 3 months of summer, was completely gone. So they did that to keep people in town and to keep businesses moving. It kept people paying their rent. It kept people paying their mortgages. And so then it's
a rent moratorium.
No,
we just
they didn't.
Them to give us our money.
Exactly. It's scary. I see Mariana has joined us, but I don't see her on video. If she was able to, I'd love to have her join our conversation. How you doing, Mariana?
I'm here. I'm just driving, so just show the video.
Okay, no worries.
On my way home from work.
Good. And we're really happy to have you join us. You are out on the, I guess, southwest coast, I would like to call it, of Washington.
Yeah, that's where I'm at.
We played some of the video of what you guys experienced protesting and meeting with the 3% and beyond in your community. How has that changed things in a place like Aberdeen?
Nobody's protesting anything anymore. Nobody's willing to go out on the street and do shit because these guys are still harassing us, Especially my one friend is getting the worst, as far as I know. It's kind of tapered off from the other people. They're not getting, mostly just focusing on Anthony. So he's not doing really well, mentally, or he lives in a big house, has all his kids living there, his grandkid, and they're all moved out, and now he's alone.
No,
It's not safe there. It's not safe there.
that's awful. I wish we could.
Robbed him of his last year of having all of his kids at home.
Yeah, you're getting cut out. Let us know when you're home, and we'll bring you on video.
Growing up and all that.
I hope you were able.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. We know you need broadband rural internet. We talked about that earlier.
Mm-hmm.
We'd be able to hear you and see you perfectly.
Usually with my phone it's better, but this is a bad stretch of the road.
Yeah, no, that happens. I mean, we totally understand. We appreciate you joining us when you can, and let everybody know that you are a candidate in LD19. Ballots have dropped now. I am now a candidate as well in Snohomish County, position 4, which goes from Mill Creek to Mountlake Terrace, parts of Bothell, unincorporated Snohomish County, and Briar. So, yeah, it's a busy week. Yeah.
How many times does someone have to ask you to run? I've heard that it takes 7 times for a woman to decide. Typically, a man is just one. So I'm just curious.
Yeah, I have not been keeping track. I can say that. I definitely felt the pressure. I was inspired by Bernie to run for PCO originally. I never saw myself as a politician. I was always an activist. I was somebody who was more interested in passing legislation and, being a citizen lobbyist and teaching. I actually, in Alaska, I worked with National Organization of Women to help childcare providers learn how to testify. One of the cool things in Alaska that I'm hoping we can bring here to Washington State was remote testimony. So I was taking that process and trying to teach people who had no idea how to advocate for themselves, how to engage, how to track legislation, know when to call in, know what to say and tell their personal story. I've since done that in Washington, D.C. I've done that internationally with the food movement. But I've been asked a long time to please run for something. And I ran for PCO a few times. And, I've been leadership with my LD, but I really didn't see, I've had to work between 2.5 to 5 jobs. So running for office really wasn't in that economic picture until COVID. So I kind of took the opportunity and ran with it.
I appreciate you for doing it. Thank you. I mean, you may not be representing my district in particular, but the reality is we need candidates like you. And before I forget, don't think of yourself as a politician. Please stay in that vibrant energy grassroots space of fighting for your community. Because your ideas are amazing. Transparency is so huge. It's going to unlock literally the world for the community that we're serving.
Well, and I also saw, it was one of those situations where I saw, you see female women, especially in leadership positions all around the world, making transformative change. And that's just innately in our nature, I believe. And we need to honor and push that forward. We have this little window at our late stage capitalism to be able to grasp ideas and make drastic change. And without that, I don't think we have much of a future. So it was kind of, everything I've done's been for my family, for my community, for the people around me, for generations to come. And I think there's an energy there that we have to honor and push forward. We've seen it in Iceland. We've seen it in New Zealand. Those countries are doing amazing, and we're failing at it miserably here in the US. Yes. So it's now's the time. We got to support people like Mariana, who's an amazing nurse running, and, everybody around our state that is, running under that progressive ticket, not to be bought out by the corporations and, the mainstream media. We have to choose a different narrative. Now's our time to do that. So anyway, we are at the top of the hour. So I just want to say thank you to everybody who's been following the show in chat. Please hit share. Check out, I will add more links to our rundown so that you can connect with the Federal Way Black Collective, and check out Lynn on Facebook. She's got an awesome Thursday night program. I've been watching the last few weeks. It's been great. And we have so much work to do. Like there, no matter where you are in this crisis, in this situation, like, know that you can impact change, and don't be a bystander. It's time to get up and stand up right now. So thank you, Oz, for everything behind the curtain, and I believe you'll be taking us out with some music soon.